Hey there and welcome. We're diving deep into mindfulness meditation today.
Always a good topic for a deep dive.
You know it, and you're obviously here because you're curious about it.
For sure, it's a hot topic these days, and for good reason.
Absolutely. So we're going to unpack some insights from 3 YouTube videos all about it.
All right, sounds good. What are we looking at?
We've got 10-minute guided meditation for mindfulness from Declutter the Mind.
Okay, I've heard of them. Very practical, those folks.
Exactly. And to get into some of the deeper stuff, we're also looking at 2 videos featuring Yogi Mingyur Rinpoche.
Oh, nice. Love him. Which talk?
Recognizing awareness and the difference between awareness and mindfulness with Yogi Mingyur Rinpoche.
Perfect. He always has a way of making things, actually make sense.
Right, that's what I love. And don't worry, this isn't about making you meditate right this second.
Unless you want to, of course.
Well, yeah. But this is more about the why behind the how,
Definitely. Why even bother? Glad we're getting into that.
Totally. And I think what's cool is how both Declutter the Mind and Rinpoche offer practical guidance and philosophical exploration.
Yeah, it's 2 sides of the same coin, right?
Totally. Declutter the Mind just jumps right into the practical stuff. Get comfy, close your eyes, focus on your breath.
The classic, but there's a reason it's a classic, right?
Exactly. But I'm always curious about what's actually happening there, the mechanics of it.
Oh, for sure. And that's where I think Mingyur Rinpoche's insights are just chef's kiss.
Right.
He's big on emphasizing that while the breath is super useful as an anchor for awareness, the real practice is understanding why that technique works.
Interesting. So it's not just about stopping all thoughts completely.
Well, that's the thing, right? Rinpoche talks about how the breath isn't meant to be the sole focus, but more like a tool to cultivate awareness itself.
Okay. So it's less about silencing the mind and more about training our attention.
Exactly. Strengthening a muscle.
I like that. It suddenly feels way less intimidating. Okay, it's a skill I can develop.
Exactly. And like any muscle, the more you work it, the stronger it gets.
Makes sense.
So when Declutter the Mind is all about gently guiding your attention back to the breath when it wanders, they're basically outlining a workout routine, but for your mind.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's actually a really helpful way to think about it.
Right. And this is where Rinpoche's analogy of the mind as a clock comes in.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one.
It's so good, right? A clock is always there, constantly working.
Ticking away.
Exactly. Our awareness is the same way, always present, even when we're not actively using it. Meditation just helps us tap into that.
So it's not about creating awareness, but more becoming aware of the awareness that's already there.
You got it. We've had this incredible tool all along, but never realized we could use it.
Wow. Okay. I'm into that.
And get this, Rinpoche even says awareness is there in our unconscious moments, when we're sleeping.
Whoa, really? I would have thought that's when it's totally off.
Nope. He says it's like the sky, always there, even if it's hidden by clouds.
Okay, that is a powerful image.
Right, makes you think.
It totally does. If it's always there, what actually changes when we do connect with it, through meditation?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And maybe where things get a little tricky, especially since people use awareness and mindfulness kind of interchangeably.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've always wondered if there's a difference.
So Mingyur Rinpoche, hilarious guy, he compares mindfulness to being conservative and awareness to being liberal.
Wait, really? I never would have put this together.
It's so Rinpoche, right? But it kind of makes sense when you think about it.
So is he saying mindfulness is more structured and awareness is more open?
You got it. He sees awareness as this bigger concept, the knowing subject itself.
Okay, I think I'm following.
And then mindfulness, at least some interpretations of it, can be more about focusing on an object, like your breath or sensations in your body.
Okay. So awareness is the whole sky, and mindfulness is noticing a particular cloud.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
And both are happening within that bigger awareness, right?
Exactly.
Wow, okay, this is blowing my mind a little bit.
It's deep stuff. But that distinction makes you wonder if awareness can include any experience. Can we meditate on, anything?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because Declutter the Mind is very much about the breath.
Totally. Super useful technique, but Rinpoche seems to be advocating for something way broader.
For sure. In one of the videos, he actually says, any experience, thoughts, feelings, even suffering can be used to connect with awareness.
It's true. And it's kind of radical when you think about it.
Totally. Because then it's not even about the breath. Really, it's just life.
Right. Life itself is the meditation.
Whoa. And that feels way less about forcing myself to be a certain way and more about just like being present with whatever's happening.
Exactly. It's more flexible, more forgiving. And it acknowledges that life is full of distractions. It's more about meeting them with this open awareness instead of trying to get rid of them.
That is such a good point.
Right. Total game changer.
It really is. Instead of getting caught up in, like, am I doing this right? Am I quiet enough? It's more like, this is all fair game for mindfulness.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got it. It's like befriending your mind instead of battling it, you
Yeah.
know? Recognizing that all those thoughts, those feelings, they're all part of what makes being alive so rich.
I love that.
Me too.
Okay, this is really making me rethink my whole approach to this.
It's powerful stuff.
It really is. So instead of mindfulness being this rigid practice, it's more like this, like, compassionate exploration of, like, just being human.
Exactly. And that's where its transformative potential really shines through. When you approach everything with that kind of open-hearted curiosity, it changes how you experience everything.
It's like, instead of shutting down all those thoughts and feelings, we're actually supposed to, like, work with them.
In a way, yeah.
This is blowing my mind.
It's a lot to take in. But think about it. What if, instead of seeing your thoughts as the enemy, you started seeing them as opportunities to practice mindfulness?
Oh, man. Okay, that's a good one. That is a really good reframe.
Right.
Okay, so, like, how do we actually do that? Because it's easy to say, just be aware. But, like, what does that actually look like in practice?
Right, because it's not always obvious, is it?
Not at all. And especially when, like, you're trying to meditate and your mind is just going a mile a minute.
It's like it almost gets worse when you try to quiet down, you know?
The meditation struggle is real, so what do we do about it?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me, particularly from Declutter the Mind, is the emphasis on gentleness. Like, when we notice our minds wandering, which, let's be real, happens constantly, we don't need to beat ourselves up about it.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm doing it again.
Right. But what if, instead of that, we just acknowledge the thought or feeling with kindness and gently bring our attention back to, you know, whatever our anchor is, breath, sounds, whatever.
It's almost like we're training a puppy, right? Like, gentle guidance, not harsh punishment.
Exactly. And like, just like with a puppy, you're going to have accidents, right? There are going to be times where we get totally swept away and don't even realize until way later.
Oh, all the time. It's
Yeah.
like I wake up from a daydream and I'm like, wait, where am I?
Right. But the key is to approach those moments with the same gentleness. Like, okay, no big deal, let's try again.
Okay, so it's all about that self-compassion. Easier said than done, but I get it.
It takes practice, for sure. But that's all part of it. We're all works in progress, always learning and growing.
Very true.
And mindfulness, I think, gives us this great tool to extend that compassion to ourselves, not just when we're meditating, but in every part of our lives.
It's like we're not trying to shut off that part of ourselves completely, just like learn how to work with it better.
Exactly. It's a more like collaborative approach.
Yes. And that makes me think about like how we approach personal growth in general. We often set these big goals and then get discouraged when we like inevitably mess up or fall short.
We're human. It happens.
Totally. So like, what if we took that same approach to meditation? Instead of aiming for this like perfectly still mind, what if it was more about just noticing when we wander off and gently guiding our attention back?
That is such a good point because it really shifts the focus, doesn't it? It's not about the end goal, but the process itself.
Right. And maybe that takes some of the pressure off.
Definitely. Like every time you notice your attention drifting, it's not a failure, it's a win.
Oh, I like that.
Because it's an opportunity to strengthen that awareness muscle.
Love it. Okay, so less pressure, more self-compassion. But then how do we actually bridge that gap between like knowing all this and actually experiencing it?
Because it's one thing to talk about it, but then like, how do we live it, right?
Exactly. Because it's easy to say, just be aware. But then I'm like, okay, but how?
Right. It's kind of a useless instruction on its own, isn't it?
Totally. So what can we actually do?
Well, there's no magic formula, unfortunately, but one thing that really resonated with me, especially from Declutter the Mind, was their emphasis on gentleness.
Oh, interesting. Gentleness towards what?
Gentleness towards ourselves, especially when we notice those wandering thoughts, because they will wander.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like they have a mind of their own.
Right. But instead of judging ourselves or getting frustrated, what if we just acknowledged it with kindness and gently redirected our attention?
Okay, so it's that like, okay, no problem, let's try that again kind of energy.
Exactly. And like we talked about before, it's like learning a new dance. It takes time, patience, and a lot of self-compassion to really get it.
Oh, I love that analogy.
And just like with dancing, there will be missteps, times when we get totally swept up in a thought or emotion and don't even realize it until like way later.
Yes.
All the time.
But the key is to approach those moments with that same gentleness and understanding. Okay, so it's a constant practice, not a get it perfect once and you're dean kind of thing.
Exactly. It's all about progress, not
Right.
perfection. Right. Because remember that awareness is always there. It's not something you have to create.
We just have to remember it's there.
Yes. And learn how to rest in it, even amidst all the busyness of life and thoughts and all that.
This is so helpful. Okay, so we're being gentle with ourselves.
Yeah.
We're remembering that awareness is always there, even when it doesn't feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
What else? What other tangible things can we do to cultivate that?
Well, remember how we talked about how mindfulness isn't just about formal meditation, but a way of being in the world?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's about bringing that same quality of presence and intention to everything we do, our interactions, our work, even just the simplest everyday moments.
So what, doing the dishes mindfully?
Exactly. Or brushing your teeth or
Yeah.
eating your lunch. It's about bringing that same awareness to those things instead of just going through the motion.
That makes me think about how often I eat lunch and don't even taste it because I'm so busy thinking about a million other things.
Right. And then it's where did lunch even go?
Exactly. So how do we change that?
By engaging our senses. That's a huge part of it. If you're eating, really taste each bite. Notice the flavors, the textures. If you're walking, feel the ground beneath your feet. Notice what you see around you.
It's like we're hitting the pause button on all the mental chatter and actually tuning into what's happening in this very moment.
Yes. And the more we practice that, the more it starts to seep into other areas of our lives as well.
So it's not just about those designated mindfulness moments. It's about integrating that into everything.
Exactly. We start responding to challenges differently. We appreciate the people in our lives more. We just feel this greater sense of peace, even when things are tough.
Wow. Okay, that's really cool. So mindfulness isn't just this thing we do. It's like a way of being.
You got it. And it can have a huge impact on, everything.
This is making me realize how much I've been on autopilot in my own life.
It's so easy to do in this day and age, right?
Totally. But it also makes me excited to start paying attention again.
That's the spirit, because it really is an incredible journey.
It is. Okay, so we've covered so much ground here, from specific meditation techniques to now mindfulness as a way of life. But for our listener, what's the one thing you want them to take away from all this?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. That awareness, that clear, open presence, it's always available to you. It's like the sky, sometimes hidden by clouds, but always there. And your journey is about gently parting those clouds moment by moment and discovering the vastness within.
I love that. So it's not about achieving this distant state of enlightenment, but about embracing the richness of our experience right here, right now.
Yes. And as you continue exploring all this, remember to be kind to yourself. It's a practice, not a destination, and there will be ups and downs along the way. But the journey itself, that's where the real transformation happens.
So well said. Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I'd love to shift gears just a bit and talk about some practical takeaways our listeners can start implementing in their daily lives, like today. What do you think?
Sounds like a great plan.
So how do we actually do that? Take all this profound stuff and make it, practical in our everyday lives.
Well, it's not about making some huge change, more like sprinkling in those mindful moments.
Okay, I like that. So,
Yeah.
give us some examples. What's something our listeners could, literally start doing today?
One of the simplest things, and it's kind of classic for a reason, is mindful breathing.
Okay, but I feel like we hear that all the time. What's different about how we're talking about it here?
It's not necessarily about carving out an hour to meditate, though that's great if you can. This is more throughout your day, just taking a minute or two to really notice your breath.
Wait, just noticing. That's it.
That's the thing. It can be that simple. Just noticing the rise and fall of your chest, how it feels cool on the inhale, warm on the exhale. Not trying to change it, just being with it,
And we can do that anywhere, right?
Exactly. Waiting in line before you eat, even during a stressful work call, it's like this mini vacation for your mind.
Oh, I like that. A mental reset button. I can
Yeah.
get behind that. Okay, what else? What other sneaky little mindfulness moments can we fit in?
Another big one is really tapping into your senses.
Oh, interesting. Because we're so used to tuning them out, right?
All the time. We get so caught up in our heads that we kind of move through the world on autopilot, and then we miss out on so much.
Oh, yes. Like when you eat an amazing meal, but you're not even paying attention because you're stressed about work.
Exactly. So the practice here is to really engage those senses. Like if you're eating, savor each bite, taste the flavors, feel the textures. If you're walking, feel your feet on the ground, look around you, take it all in.
It's like we're hitting the pause button on all that mental chatter and actually like listening to the world around us.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, the more we do that with those simple everyday things, the more it starts to influence how we approach like everything else too.
So it's not just about those little moments. It's like they start to add up to something bigger.
Exactly. And we find ourselves responding to challenges differently. We appreciate the people in our lives more. We just feel this greater sense of peace and contentment, even when things are tough.
Wow. Okay, I'm into that. So it's like mindfulness isn't just something we do. It's a way of being in the world.
Yes. And it can have such a profound impact on everything.
This has been such an incredible conversation, seriously. But if our listener is only going to take away one thing from this whole deep dive, what would it be?
Remember this, that awareness, that clear, open presence. It's always available to you, whether you feel it or not. It's like the sky, sometimes covered by clouds, but always there. And your practice is just about gently parting those clouds, moment by moment, and discovering that vastness within you.
That is beautiful. I love that. So it's not about achieving some like far-off state of enlightenment, but like you said, connecting with what's already here.
Exactly. And as you explore this, remember to be kind to yourself. It's a practice, not a destination, and there will be ups and downs.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's a journey, that's for sure. Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine.